A lot of photographers often find themselves hyperfixating on certain specifications. The same mistake happened to me too. And in this video I'm going to explain the mistake I made in hopes that you don't make the mistake either. And I'll offer some tips which I think may help. At the end I'll share my insight on whether I believe it is better to go with a expensive camera with a cheap lens or an expensive lens with a cheap camera. But without further ado, let's get to the point. What was the mistake I keep talking about? It's caring too much about megapixels. Now, don't get me wrong, often having a higher megapixel camera does mean better quality, a better camera. However, you might not always want to upgrade, because you see, having a lower megapixel camera does have its advantages, which I will get into in just a second. You see, I have the Canon R6, which is what I'm using to record this video right now, and it is an absolute beast. It has great eye control, it has everything I wanted. However, I still felt like I needed to make the upgrade. Why? Because I wanted to make prints. I wanted to start selling prints online, and I even wanted to start doing more wildlife photography and getting them intricate details which the professional photographers have. Which is when I saw the R5, 45 megapixels. I thought I had to make that jump. Compared to my R6, which is only 20 megapixels, it was a no-brainer. And I looked at the price and I was going to do it, even though it may hurt my pocket a little more than I would like. But then I stumbled across a video. I'm not sure what video it was or whose video it was, but I saw they used a feature on Lightroom. Many of you might already know what it is. The Enhance tool. Being able to increase the resolution from inside Lightroom itself. And of course it has its drawbacks. For example, because it's digitally replacing the pixels with what it thinks is there, it might not be as sharp as the original image should be if you just got a high megapixel camera. However, that is also saving you approximately about £1,000. Of course, there are certain situations where having a 45 megapixel camera does just outweigh a camera, for example, like the R6 of just 20 megapixels. For example, if you're taking a picture of a bird which is quite far away, let's say an owl, and you have to maintain your distance, and your lens can't quite get that far, and you know you're going to have to digitally crop in, then having a higher megapixel camera is much better for that reason. However, a 45 megapixel camera does also have its disadvantages. Yes, who would have known that having a higher megapixel camera has disadvantages, such as it takes up more space on your camera, meaning you get to take less photos, meaning if you're burst shooting, you're not going to be able to take as many photos before your card completely fills up. Okay, that was a bit obvious. But another one, if you like shooting in low light conditions, maybe you go to a wedding or you shoot in night photography, where you know you're going to have to ramp up the ISO just that little bit, having a higher megapixel camera isn't as good as a lower megapixel camera. Why? Because with a lower megapixel camera, the noise will actually be smaller, which in return will make the image look sharper. Now, does that mean I don't want the R5? Of course not. I would love to get the R5. However, that might be in the future when and if I start earning money off photography. I just wanted you to know that sometimes spending more money and obsessing over certain specifications isn't the best thing you can do. Instead, go out there, take photos, improve, and over time you will realise the camera which you shoot at is good enough. Whether that be a phone, a £1,000 camera, a £20,000 camera, it's all about the photographer. Now, cheap lens, expensive camera, or cheap camera, expensive lens. Now, personally, I think it depends. I think it depends on what you're going to shoot. If you know you're only going to use one focal length, for example a 50mm, maybe you're doing street photography or portraits, and you know you're only going to use 50mm of focal length, then absolutely you can get an expensive camera with just a prime lens. For example, this 50mm lens, which you can pick up off Amazon for about £130, which in my opinion is an absolute steal. However, if you're someone which you don't quite know what photos you're going to take, or you know you're going to have to use multiple different focal lengths, then I would absolutely recommend getting a cheaper camera with a more expensive lens. For example, this 100-400mm lens, which is perfect for wildlife. That lens will give you better quality than a £2,000 camera with a £100 kit lens, as you are getting the detail for what it actually is. And honestly, that's what I recommend to most people. Now, that's all I've got for this video. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you learned something new, let me know in the comments. If you disagree with something I said, also let me know. My goal is to make every video better. This video has been difficult knowing what to say. You might be able to see in certain part of the video I've maybe looked at the script. It might be a little bit janky, but I'm trying my best, and hopefully next video will be better. But peace.